Hello, and welcome to the PEI webinar series. Today's webinar will feature an update on PEI's initiatives for service technicians. Feel free at any time to ask a question in the Q&A box, and we'll follow up at a later date after the webinar. You'll also be able to email me or call me for additional information, and that contact information will be provided at the end of the webinar. Today's presenters will be Scott Borse and Rebecca Dario. Scott Borse is the Director of Technical Programs and Industry Affairs and is leading the Workforce Development Initiative for PEI. Scott has more than 30 years experience in the energy handling industry and brings a wide and varied technical background to the training and development program for PEI. Rebecca Dario is the President and founder of RAD Training. As a training and development consultant, Rebecca uses her background in human resources to encourage and support organizations implement training and development strategies to recruit, train, develop, and retain a workforce in today's economic climate. Her expertise guides the development of career pathways within industries that need to attract a new generation through contemporarily accessible work-based learning, on-the-job training, e-learning, and registered apprenticeship. Please welcome Rebecca Dario. So Rebecca, before we start today, would you give us a quick 30-second overview of what your team does and how you've partnered with PEI to develop the learning platform?
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Thank you, everybody, for having me here today. So at RAD, we really create sophisticated, accessible training programs in an effort to do exactly what you had mentioned: attract, train, retain individuals to the workforce. We focus we have a specialty in instructional design, LMS integration, curriculum development, career pathing, and registered apprenticeships. What we've done with PEI and what you're going to see today is really responded to industry members and their request for support for workforce development initiatives. And that's really what we'll talk about today. So,
all right, great. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I was just going to say, let's kind of jump in and get started.
All right. No, that's good. And thanks for that insight. I'm sure as we go through today's webinar, you'll provide some additional information and we talk more about workforce development.
Thanks, Scott. So let's start out with the state of things. So we're all on the same page when it comes to clear expectations of talent that is currently available. I know many of you probably have open positions right now because, as you know, as of August of 2022, so this year, the unemployment rate is about 3.7%. The largest percentage of unemployed is 16 to 19-year-olds. So they're super young, super green to the workforce as a whole, not just industry, but to workforce as a whole. And that demographic is followed closely by the 20 to 24-year-olds. If we break down the workforce, what we're going to see is that we still have a variety of different generations in the workforce. The first is the silent or the greatest generation. Those are folks that were born in 1945 or earlier. So I think those that are born in 1945 should be about 78 this year. So they are exiting the workforce. There's not many still involved, and those that are soon leaving. Same thing with boomers. So boomers are exiting the workforce. So many of them are retiring. So the majority of the workforce right now, we're going to see a lot of Gen Xers, who, if you think about your Gen X demographic, they're typically in role. They're not doing a lot of shifting of industry. They're ideally hunkering down and sticking with that role or that industry they're involved in. So our focus is really going to be with millennials and Gen Zers. That's who the talent pool, where the talent pool really lies right now. So what does that mean? What does that mean for us as employers? What does that mean for us as an industry? What we're saying is that the applicant pool is made up of primarily a green workforce, new to workforce, new to industry, getting out of high school or soon getting out of high school. What's even more chilling is that all of our employers, all industries, are looking for those same folks, those same green candidates. So what are we going to do the question is, to attract them to our industry? What are we going to do to attract them to the energy handling industry? Well, as we take a look at Gallup's poll, so this is a recent Gallup poll that looked at Gen Zers and millennials and the top reasons that they worked for the current organization, that they're with. First and foremost, we're going to start with good work-life balance. We're living in a post-pandemic world. If you're not focused on work-life balance, we need to think about that. But let's look at what's second on this list. What's second on this list is learning and development opportunities. That's what's most important to our Gen Zers and our millennials today, which is great because we know we have to train them. We know we have to get them the education and the career development that they need. 87% of millennials rate professional or career growth and development opportunities as important to them in their job. So I think at this point, let's all agree that training has to be a priority if it's not already in our heads. That's really the point of this whole activity and these statistics, is that we really have to understand that there's not the skilled applicants out there. The applicants that are out there are unskilled, and it's our responsibility to train them. So how do we do that? And how do we do that in a way that is effective, efficient, and really going to cater to the needs of these young adults? We're going to start off with principles of adult learning. And I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I do want to make sure that we bring it up because adults learn a little bit differently than children do. And so it's important for us as adults and those responsible for hiring individuals and training individuals that we understand how they learn. The first principle is involvement in learning. Adults typically want to be involved in the learning process, right? They want to make sure that they are understanding what they're learning. The second piece is experience provides basis for learning. Everybody learns different because they've had some background. When you're a kid and when you're a child, you are a clean slate. That's why they are sponges, right? They absorb all of the knowledge that's around them. When you're an adult, a young adult, when you're 18, 20, 21, you've had some experience, whether that's in school, whether that's you're on a team and sports team, whether you participate in piano lessons, you have some sort of basis for learning, whether you help your dad work on cars. The idea here is that you have some experience that provides some sort of foundation for the next learning experience in your life. The third piece is relevance to their work in life, right? We want to make sure that we're teaching things that they're able to apply on the job right now. And lastly, problem-centered versus content-centered. All adults want to know why. How can we solve this problem versus just telling me something because I need to know it? So the couple of things just to keep in mind when we're talking about how we're going to teach people and how we're going to do it effectively, we have to keep these things in mind. When we're talking about e-learning strategies, which is a big piece of how we're going to solve the problems or how we're going to communicate what we've put together for PEI, we're talking about sophisticated, effective e-learning strategies that tackle different learning styles. So not just principles of learning and how adults learn, but really tackling different learning styles in adults. As you grow, you might have, or as you've become an adult, you might have noticed that you learn differently if you see something versus if you hear something, or maybe you're more of a hands-on learner, right? Those learning styles are specifically called visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. The visual learner performs better by looking at simple images, processes, graphs. They learn better when they see a presentation or a flip chart. The auditory learner performs better when they're able to hear a process, have it recorded or talked about in a topic in a discussion. And the kinesthetic learner are best able to understand concepts when they are allowed to do it. These are the folks that prefer that hands-on approach. Now, with this being said, when we look at, we're going to have a little bit of a demo of the learning management system today. When you look at that learning management system, we address all of these types of learners. We have a lot of presentations that learners are able to see A lot of the content is recorded, so people can push the play button and hear a lot of that content recorded back to them. And then they also are going to be able to actively interact with some of that content, flip cards, games, checklists. The idea is that we're trying to engage all different types of learners and the different types of learning styles. The end goal here is to retain individuals and provide some sort of mobility for folks. As I'm sure you've noticed, there's a lot of individuals that want to continue to grow, continue to learn. When individuals feel like they're stagnant, they tend to bounce. And so what can we do to keep individuals involved? Scott's going to talk a little bit about not just the programs we've created thus far, but also the programs that we're going to create in order to continue that professional development. In addition to that, we also have a lot of credentialing that we're going to be talking about. Individuals want proof of qualifications and those abilities, professional credibility. When you offer a credential, it creates goals, it creates a roadmap for careers. And so the other piece Scott's going to mention when we do our demo today is how one can achieve that professional credential through some of the service tech positions and learning programs that we're going to showcase today. The cherry on top is that a lot of these, the cherry on top, let's talk about from 30,000 feet. Our nation knows that we have a growing skills gap. They know various industries are going to get hit hard by mass exodus of retirees. Supported by both sides of the aisle, funding is available to help offset costs associated with training and development of unskilled workers. They know that if they don't support it, we could lose businesses to overseas. We need to maintain that competitive advantage. They know organizations will find their workforce elsewhere. So grants can often be accessed through your state or local workforce development boards. It's important to ask about training and other funding to support or offset the costs of candidate training. You can ask, there are community-based organizations called the American Job Center or Career One Stop that will offer state-specific tax incentives, and all not a ton of paperwork, not a lot of time. But if you need training programs like the ones we're going to talk about today, you can access a lot of grant funds to support and offset those training costs. Scott, I think here we're going to go ahead and do the demo of the learning management system that we've put together.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca, for that information and the background and some very interesting information around how people learn, especially adult learners, and how we're going to approach our workforce development. I now want to take us on a short demo of what we're going to call the PEI Education Center. This is a new initiative that has grown this year that PEI staff has spent a lot of time on. And it basically all begins at the PEI homepage at www.pei.org. Maybe. Oh. Just to verify, Rebecca, you can see that, correct?
Yep, I was just going to say, I can see your homepage, yes.
Okay. So the demo will begin here. As many of you know, the PEI website was revamped this year. So this is our new homepage. And at this top ribbon here, we have an area that's called training. And if you hit that little caret, the drop down, you'll see that there's the PEI Education Center. That's what you're going to want to click on first. This takes you to basically our PEI Education Center landing page. And then we're going to click on this big red button that says Launch Educational Resources. This takes us to our PEI Education Center. And on here, you can see that there's a wealth of information on what the PEI Education Center does, how and why to use it. One of the things I do want to point out is a lot of times with learning management systems or web-based systems, One may need help to access the information. So we provide a nice big help identification ribbon here that pretty much tells you who you need to call for what specific issues. I will say the very first time that someone enters the PEI Education Center, you're going to want to sign in, and even though I just click sign out. So you want to sign up first. That takes you to this very first page. You're going to enter your name, then your last name. You're going to pick an email. This is my personal email at home, and I would advise that you pick a personal email since the information follows the student. It will not follow the company, it follows the student. So pick an email for the student. That person then picks a password. You want to select your time zone. You then want to put in what company you work for. So I work for PEI. Am I a member? Yes, I am. And then if you know your PEI-D number offhand, which probably most people don't, but if they do, you can enter it here. What I will say, if you need to get your PEI member ID number, when you log into the PEI home site for the first time, it should be available there. You will click sign up. I'm actually going to click sign in since I've already signed up once, and it takes you here. We say sign in. And now I'm signed into the website. And again, we kind of went over that a little bit because the very first time that you log into the PEI Education Center, you basically have to create an account. The account is nothing more than your name and a password so that you can access this information in the future. It also tracks the information for the individual. So as Rebecca mentioned before, one of the things that we're attempting to do is create a career path. So even though you may only take one course or two courses, in the future, we'll have multiple courses available. As you pass and complete those courses, that information follows you and begins to track your career progression. I'm going to scroll down here to the section that says courses now. You'll see that we have 4 boxes on here. The first 2 says Service Technician Training Level 1, Service Technician Training Level 2. It's also then repeated in these other 2 boxes. The first boxes are the actual online training courses. The next 2 boxes are the actual PDF version of the document that you can purchase on the PEI website as well. This is the companion manual that you should purchase when you're going through the course. For today's demonstration, we're just going to look at level 1. We click level 1. It then takes you to basically our e-learning course. This page provides an overview of the title of the course, a description of the course, the learning objectives. It also identifies the content level, whether it's a beginning, intermediate, or advanced level course. It also provides an estimated time to complete. And you'll see in here that in order to go through the entire course, where all 15 chapters, complete the 3 assignments and the last assessment, we're estimating it'll take you about 3 to 4 hours. One of the key components of how this system is designed is it's not intended to sit down and do the entire course all at one time. You do have the ability to do that if so chosen. However, each one of these learning lessons is divided up into small chunks of information. Again, one of the things that Rebecca indicated is that the way adult learners learn is they want quick bites of information. Let me understand what I need to know. Let me comprehend that, and then let me complete it and see that I've actually done that. And that's the way these courses are set up. They're bite-sized chunks of information. It also allows someone to do something maybe before they go out into the field. So if I'm a service technician that I'm working for your company, hey, you know what, over the course of the next 2 weeks, maybe I could do 1 chapter each morning before I go out into the field. Or if I'm sitting on my tailgate at lunchtime, I can utilize it through my smartphone or some other device, tablet, that would allow me to do that. And again, one of the things is this is not just a computer-based operation. It will work on any electronic device. It also goes into the interactivity, which we talked before, which is the audible, visual, and kinesthetic approaches to learning. It's active, so it makes people force through. It's not just regurgitating information or not just reading information. You actually have to see, hear, and react to the information or the learning lessons. Also on this page, it gives you the outline of all the different chapters and what you're going to learn within that service tech manual. As you can see, level 1, we have 15 total chapters, followed by an assessment, which is basically a test of 50 questions that assesses the ability of the student and what they've learned over completing those 15 chapters. There's also then a short survey for feedback that PEI likes to utilize so that we can continuously improve the courses. And ultimately, you'll see that you end up getting a certificate of completion, which you can then use and transfer to various organizations to prove that you've gone through this training process. For today, we're going to just take a look at General Chapter 2, which is General Knowledge and Orientation. So we'll click on that. You go through here, it gives you basically an overview of what Chapter 2 is going to be. And you want to click the little blue button down here that says Launch Content. Upon clicking that, you hit the first lesson, which is lesson 1 of 6. So you'll see that within chapter 2, there are 6 specific lessons. We're going to go over job responsibilities, equipment and safety, signs, documentation, take a quick chapter quiz, and then we move to the next chapter. As we mentioned before, you'll see that there's a little audio portion above each one of these. As Rebecca indicated, again, from the adult learner prospects of how people learn as adults, you have the audible, which is the hearing portion, the visual, so I can read this and comprehend it. And then there's the kinesthetic portion of that, which we'll get to that in a minute, which that is actually utilizing some of the things and having activities and engaging the learner. There's also videos that are inside of this. So as you can click on this, you can see, and we'll show videos. This is actually one of our service tech profiles. It's been on the PEI website in the past. And again, this just gives us an overview of what this person does on a regular basis. We then click and go to equipment and safety. This one I'll click so you can actually hear it.
You are going to be working with the electrical, hydraulic, and mechanical parts of petroleum equipment. During your first days on the job, you'll need to know some things about the equipment you'll be servicing, including dispensers, suction pumps, submersible pumps, underground tanks, above ground tanks.
So you'll see that many of the areas also have, as we indicated, this audible portion so that you can play that, you can read along with it. Again, what we found is the way that people learn is if they hear it and see it and then interact with it, they actually will comprehend much more than if they were just to read words on a page. Some of this I'm going to scroll through fairly quickly. A lot of it is very basic information, but again, from someone that would be entering our industry, this information is essential for understanding how the petroleum liquid fueling arena works, or the energy handling arena. You'll also notice we have very high definition photos that are on here to give people ideas of what things actually look like that they'd be dealing with on a regular basis. Moving into lesson 3, again, you'll see that we do the same scenario. We start with an audible piece, we move into the visual piece, which you can read, and that goes through on each side. We also have the engagement portion. You'll see that we have these arrows here on the left and right. So these are the different types. So as you scroll through this, the engagement of the student to be involved in the actual learning process. So not only are they just reading the information and hearing the information, they need to click along and can see it. You also notice the terms are very generic, but again, as we go through, you'll see how this. Some of the other information that we have is also, if you want to learn more, we have the ability to click on links within the system that will take you to outside of the of the learning management system to provide more information, whether that's OSHA requirements or laws, regulations from the EPA and or state agencies. We have that also built into this system so that people can get more information as they go through the process. I'm just going to scroll through some of these that you can see here. You'll also notice here again, and you'll see this maybe in the quiz area that we'll look at in a little bit, of understanding and segmenting different things so that people can understand what the different components as they're going through the learning process are. Again, the other thing that I'll indicate is that the course outline follows the same scenario or the same chapter outline that we have in the adjoining or the accompanying manual. So if you already have a copy of the Service Tech Manual 1 or Service Tech Manual 2, it follows the same chronological order. So if you're going through chapter 2, you would be following through this same section on signs within chapter 2. Again, we'll click through documentation. Again, you can see we start everything with an audible piece first, followed by the visual written piece, and then we move into areas of the kinesthetic approach. And you'll see that here in the chapter quiz. So one of the things as we've gone through this, and since I've actually gone through and completed this, I've taken this quiz once. But you can see that you can actually take the quiz again. And we're going to do that today because I'd like to show you how after each one of the lessons that we have these kind of quizzes that basically give the ability of the student to comprehend what they've learned. So if we say take again, you'll see that it's chapter quiz. We're going to take this again, and then we actually have a series of 4 questions. This first one is substances that have flash point below 100 degrees Fahrenheit are considered, and it's multiple choice. I think I'm going to answer flammable. You also get immediate reaction to whether your answer is correct or not. Again, something that we've seen in young learners is that they need that instant response of whether they've done something positive or negative. This one, I was correct. And again, it also gives a little overview that says what the definition of flammable is. And this would be for all of the different answers. Continuing on. So this one asks, what is B20? Again, and there's a series of answers here. I think it's actually 20% biodiesel and 80% conventional diesel. One thing that I will say is if you take this multiple times, the system will actually reorient each one of the answers. So it's not like you can go through and if you get this question, it's going to say, oh, I know it was the first bullet point. It actually mixes them up so that you basically the student has to read each one of the answers in order to get it correct. Again, we also give a little overview after each one as reaffirmation of the question. Number 3, what is DEF? I believe it is diesel exhaust fluid. Yes, that is correct. And then lastly, oh, we have this one again, which is, and here's part of that kinesthetic approach of how we move forward. So not only am I just answering or clicking buttons, I'm actually going to have to move some of this around. So I know that red deals with flammability. I think white deals with special hazards. I think yellow is instability. And blue is health. And only after do I join all the different components together will I be able to submit my answer. And again, in this case, we've got it right. And I should get some sort of instant gratification that I've done a good job. So if I hit that, here we go. And again, this might seem a little mundane or kind of over the top, but what we've learned about young learners is they need this immediate gratification that they've done something correctly. That actually helps them understand and move forward. So again, after each one of our chapters there is a quiz that you take. Again, if we want to take it again, you can. You can take it as many times as you want. Typically, we give you an idea that you should get at least an 80% in order to move to the next chapter. If you don't, you retake the quiz. So we have finished chapter 2. We would hit the next chapter button. And then we would hit this green button that would say, click here to proceed. That then takes us to the next chapter. So that's the overview of the demo today. One of the things that when you would go through all 15 chapters, you would end up with a certificate of completion, which you can see at the end here. And this gets printed out. It also follows you to wherever you go. So as long as you maintain your login information, the learning management platform will track all that information, and you would be able to reprint these at any time in the future, especially if a student moved from one position to a different position or had to re-show it. They can do that as well. So lastly, Rebecca mentioned that this is just the start. So we are literally in the foundational stages of adapting the workforce development and the education, the PEI Education Center. What we're currently working on is some future enhancements. Right now, we are going to add 6 additional recommended practices. So we've started with the first 2 service tech manuals, and now we're going to move into the recommended practices area. Utilizing that, we're going to establish learning modules for these top 6 RPs, basically by the end of 2023. And over the course of the next 12 months, we'll be adding these ongoing as we move forward. One of the other things we're looking to do is also to add the RP tests to the Education Center. So right now, if you go to our PEI website, you can click on any one of our recommended practices, and there's a test that you can take in order to prove that you've gone through that. We'll be moving those tests to the Education Center as well. And lastly, all of this ties into developing a credentialed career path. The vision of the PEI Education Center is to actually identify a path for a new worker that enters our industry of what they can go through and how they can develop their information over the course of time. And then actually it will track them that they can utilize that information at any point in the future. All of this is going to be based on the information and content that is established within the PEI organization. So without further ado, Rebecca, I just want to give you one option. Are there any final words that you may want to add to what we've gone over today?
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot. I think we just want to reiterate, this is a response to the member request for support in this workforce development. These are, again, easily accessible, easy to understand, very engaging learning systems that will hopefully attract individuals to the industry, train them effectively in ways they can easily understand, and the continued development of additional programs will hopefully support that retention. So that's it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, I think that's great information, and thanks for summarizing that up. Again, basically, I know we've covered a lot of material today, and we're greatly happy that you followed along. I also want to say, if anyone has any questions or needs further information, please contact me directly, Scott Borse, at sborse@pei.org, or by calling 918-494-9696 and asking for me directly. Thank you for your time today, and have a great day. Thanks again, Rebecca. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.